Okay, are we live?
Just a few more moments.
Okay.
All right, you've got 7:09 and you're live.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for your patience and for staying online. I'd like to welcome you all to the June 16th, 2021 meeting of the City of Oneonta Planning Commission. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Here.
Vice Chair Overby, Vice Chair Overby,
Here.
Commissioner Maskin,
Here.
Commissioner Stanton, Commissioner Thomas is excused, Commissioner Daigen will be joining us later. Councilmember Risberger,
Here.
confirming you do not have a quorum yet, Chair.
Thank you. So really quick, I know that we have a lot of individuals from the public here today, likely to discuss or listen to discussions surrounding the Hawk Hill solar project. I wanted to thank you all for taking time out of your day to attend the meeting. Public comment, particularly comments made on record, are really, really important and are a crucial part of the planning process. We ask that you adhere to a couple of ground rules. The first being that we would like comments about the project to focus solely on the project. We would like petitioners to refrain from ad hominem or character attacks, keep things civil, keep things professional. We encourage comments to be submitted in writing as well as submitted verbally. The more detail, the better. And we won't have a time limit, although if comments veer off topic, we will kindly remind the petitioner to remain on topic on the project in which they're intending to comment on. I'll ask when we have our presenters discuss their respective projects, we will ask if there's any petitioners willing to comment on the particular project at hand. And if there is somebody willing to comment, we will let them go through their comments. And yeah, these meetings can be contentious, but keep in mind that the Planning Commission is here to do what we can to act in the best interest of the City of Oneonta, as per our powers given to us by the Common Council. Okay, so I don't see Commissioner Daigen here yet, unfortunately. Can the individuals on the phone identify themselves for the record, please?
Danny, maybe you should call their names out if you can see them. It's going to take all night.
Yeah, there's a number that says 607-743 437-0731. Can you identify yourself, please? And then there's one person who has a number of 607-988-2750. Just trying to figure out who you are.
That's me. I'm Derek Bloomfield.
Thank you. And then the person with the number 437-0731. Can you identify yourself, please? Okay. So there was one bit of kind of not on the agenda that Steve Yearley mentioned, kind of shot me an email today discussing the proposed MU1 form-based code. And he's had mentioned that there was some input from the legislative committee. Steve, do you want to kind of let the commission know what that was? And
so we talked about the code update at the legislative committee meeting, and what kind of came up was the height stuff that we talked about in the planning commission. There was a lot of discussion about height limitations and how those might affect future development. one of the ideas that was brought up in the planning commission was we wanted to come up with ways to encourage development that met environmental or like LEED standards. So one thought that I've kind of kicked around that we can discuss at some point, maybe not tonight with full agenda, but the idea of incorporating LEED or NYSERDA stretch code standards as a way to add building height, so that in like the T5 sector, you could theoretically build a taller building if you met certain environmental or development standards associated with LEED or NYSERDA. And that was kind of where we ended up.
So that's helpful to know. I think that my understanding, Stephen, is that the legislative committee, there's still a lot of openings to discuss other types of incentives that could go along with taller construction too. So for instance, we could place an emphasis on the inclusion of affordable housing units as a component of it. But I think the LEED or NYSERDA stretch code component could also make the city more, I guess, competitive, or I guess eligible for points under the Clean Energy Communities program or the Climate Smart Communities program. I know that the city is nearing bronze certification as a climate smart community, so it's good to know.
So have we sent a resolution to the legislative committee yet?
I think we've issued, we've stated our support of the form-based code and encouraged review. But I think that once it enters council review, we probably would want something more, like a more substantial written resolution, perhaps. I think we might have. I'd have to check. No, I think we did this certified local government resolution supporting that, but we haven't done it for them yet.
Right. Okay.
We did have a new person join us. Someone from Terry's iPhone. But that doesn't appear to be Commissioner Daigan.
This is Terry Bastekis. I'm on here for I live on Suncrest Terrace. They told us to join in relation to talking about the solar farm. Is that not this meeting?
It is, yes. It will be, right now, the solar project proposed by Nexamp and Hartwick College is second on the agenda in terms of our projects. So I guess what we can do, we can go to correspondence on the agenda. Carrie, have we received any correspondence? I mean, the answer is yes, we received quite a few comments, but was there any other correspondence?
There's no correspondence. It's not related to one of the projects at hand tonight.
Okay, and are there any petitioners wishing to address the commission on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, so let me shoot Shane a quick message again and see if he shows up.
So Danny, this is Len. What are our options since we're missing one of your commissioners? And we obviously have an interest in getting these two very important projects discussed.
So
Can you call a special meeting knowing full well that all the commissioners can be there in attendance?
I believe we can. We could also hear comments on the project. We just can't, we would just have to table any action that we take on any of the, projects on our agenda. So if people wanted to submit comments for the record tonight, they can do so.
Andy, the only problem with having them present tonight is you've got 3 members that are not here.
Yeah, so that's the
Will not
issue. So
be
they,
present to hear all these.
yeah, so I mean,
and
if
it's
they
not
would have
just
to
the-
watch the recording.
Well, it's not just the 2 projects. We've got Greek organizations that are here that
Correct.
were put off last time because information wasn't given to the city yet.
Right.
And
Understood.
we could be asking them to wait yet another month.
Yeah,
We have to notify about a special meeting, don't we?
That's
Yeah,
true.
Public officers law, right, Carrie, it would have to be at least 72 hours.
yes.
The problem, that is the standard, yes, you are all correct. The problem with the Planning Commission and the Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals is they require public notice to any resident within 200 feet. They
So
also
that-
require legal notice in the paper.
So that
So we would have
requires-
to have enough time to get that notice in the paper and have 5 days. So you're looking at least a 2-week wait.
Right. So I think it'd be unfair. and I recognize what you're saying, Councilman Risberger. It would be unfair to put off the Greek organizations who've been waiting. But again, I have to apologize to everybody in attendance. We weren't expecting to have the absences that we were having. I did hear from Commissioner Dygin today that he would be late, but I didn't hear from Commissioner Stanton.
We still have a vacancy.
Yes. So maybe if you know anybody who's looking to serve on the commission, I think it'd be good to refer their name to the council for consideration. I'm kind of in my mind, I'm thinking of Martine. But I'm sure he's busy enough as it is.
Hands off, Danny. He's on the airport commission already.
Darn.
Let me think about it. That's the political correct answer. I'll
Yeah.
think about it.
Oh. If he's on the airport commission, then
Yeah.
well, many of us serve on two commissions. I'm also on the housing commission too. So okay, looks like somebody. Okay,
Yeah, I
so
am
it
in the
looks
meeting.
like Commissioner Dygin just joined. All right, so we have a quorum. Great. Okay, apologies for the delay. Let's get started with the meeting agenda. Okay, so the first on the agenda, we have Alpha Sigma Phi. Is there a representative from Alpha Sigma Phi present tonight?
I'm here as well, Mr. Charles Allen and a few others, fraternity brothers.
Great. So I think last month we were waiting on some documentation to be submitted to the city. And so Stephen, is everything taken care of with that application?
Yep.
Okay, so I believe, let me pull up the minutes from the last meeting. Oh, we can do minutes too. We can do that later. Let's see.
I'm going to have to abstain on both of those minutes because I wasn't there.
Of course, yeah. So we're gonna do minutes later. I kind of got backwards on the agenda. I got excited to get on the agenda, get started with our agenda items. So we can go back to do the minutes after this. So the first thing that we would have to do for this project is to classify the action under seeker. So according to the memo prepared by Stephen, this would be a type 2 action under seeker, particular that has to do with part 617. Let me see, the actual regulations. Oh, here we go. It's part 617.5, subpart 18, which refers to the reuse of a residential or commercial structure. or structure containing mixed uses, where the residential use is a permitted use under the applicable zoning law ordinance, including by special permit. So do I have a motion to classify this action as a type 2 action under seeker?
I'll move. Commissioner Maston.
Motion made by Commissioner Maskin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Overby. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Overby,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, great. So the next thing that we have to do is issue a site plan and special use permit approval. Does anybody have any comments on the site plan and special use permit application? I mean, this is a relatively non-controversial use. It's been in operation as a fraternity house for quite some time. They have all the required documentation and appear to have a satisfactory application, in my opinion. Does anybody want to move approval of the site plan and special use permit application?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Chair Overby. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Maskin. Is there any further discussion?
Chair, can that motion be amended to include the stipulations as presented for the permit?
Yes. Commissioner Maskin, would you be willing to amend your motion?
Well, it was Mr. Overby's motion.
Oh,
but I'm
Mr.
all
Overby,
for it.
sorry, sorry, Vice Chair Overby, would you be willing to amend your motion?
Yes. Amend.
Okay. Second? Do I have a second?
Yeah. Second.
Commissioner Maskin seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, could you please call the roll on the motion as amended?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Overby,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we can do minutes, but since Vice Chair Overby is abstaining from both of the minutes, I guess we have to hold that over to next meeting where we have another person, or we have a quorum, because without him, we would not have a quorum to vote on the minutes. Is that correct?
Correct. Motion would automatically fail.
Okay, so
Well, my abstention and the other absences add up to that it would be a no vote.
so
It would be
I guess we could motion to table the approval of minutes until to the July meeting then.
I'll
Yeah, I
make that
think-
motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Maskin. Do I have a second?
second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Overby. Any further discussion? I think this could just be a voice vote, isn't it? Or do
Or
we?
you can pass it by acclamation.
Okay, I guess we could pass by acclamation in that case. So moving on to the agenda, we have the Hawk Hill Solar Project. There's been quite a bit of development around that project, and we can kind of go through it little by little. But first, let's hear from members of the public who are here to speak about the project. So we would like, if you're going to speak about the Hawk Hill Solar Project, please identify yourself and state your name and address for the record. And then we'll kind of go through each one. I'll do my best to pay attention to everybody in the Zoom queue here. So do we have any petitioners wishing to address the commission regarding the Hawk Hill Solar Project?
This is Kim Griswold at 10 Suncrest Terrace.
All right, go ahead, Kim.
Okay, I did submit a letter with many concerns, but I have 3 specific ones that I would like to focus on tonight. And the first is the traffic, the construction traffic coming through our neighborhood. I would like to make sure that it is on the record that when Hartwick did their improvements, when they were planning on putting a track area for javelin, shot put, and discus up there, they did have the truck traffic come up through campus. So it is possible for, you know, those vehicles to go through the Hartwick campus. So that's one thing that, you know, I just want to really point out. And of course, I have a lot of concerns about truck traffic through our neighborhood. You know, we have narrow roads. You know, we have a very sharp turn, you know, either way you go through our neighborhood. And I think it's, you know, something that we really need to pay attention to. In addition, you know, I'm really concerned about the setback from our home. We are probably one of the closer homes to the project. And, you know, while we, you know, really do feel like this project has merit, you know, we're concerned about the ramifications of, you know, the site, the noise, the truck turnaround that's going to be near our home, you know, and what this is going to do to our property values and our quality of life. So that's a really big concern. So one of the things that I'd like to see the Planning Commission consider is adding a larger setback from the homes. The last thing that we could not quite get a straight answer to from either the documents or the walk around last night was about the vegetation between the tree line and the fence, and who will be responsible for that and maintaining that. You know, that's a big area of concern for us because the wooded area that I believe, you know, people are considering will be a buffer zone is not, you know, the trees are very close together and they're dying out from, you know, just that issue and falling down. And we're not going to have the buffer that I think people believe we will have. So those are three of my top concerns. In addition, I did submit a letter with other areas of concern.
Annie, you're muted.
So I know that representatives from Nexamp are here. I just wanted to give you the parcel number so that if you're pulling up the civil sets, you can see. The parcel number is 288.13-1-9.2. Okay, and thank you, Kim, for your comments. Is there anybody else here to address the commission about the Hawk Hill Solar Project?
Yes, Danny. My name is Martijn Kamerbeek. I live on 4 Overlook Drive. We also submitted a letter, my wife and I, and there are 2 items I would like to add, and that is the concern about the water runoff due to the modification of the property. So the solar panels, the water they generate, and many people know that we already have a lot of water coming down the hill towards our properties, and we're worried that it would get worse and that it would cause adverse situations. And the other item I would like to bring up is the continued enjoyment of strawberry fields. Many of the residents are fortunate enough to be allowed by Hartwick Property to use Strawberry Hills to walk, and we would like to see that continued. The other concerns were already answered by Kim, and also there is more information in the letter we submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Martijn. I appreciate your comments. Is there any other petitioners here to address the commission about the Hawk Hill project?
Yes, I'm Carol Clemens. I live at 12 Overlook Drive. And just to follow up on one of Martine's concerns, as he said, we already have significant drainage issues here. My question is, if they get worse, who do we direct our concern to? Is it the city, is it Hartwick College, or is it Nexamp? Who's responsible for any additional issues having to do with drainage?
Okay. Thank you. We'll have, we'll allow the representatives from Nexamp to address all of the questions received when they're able to present. So Ms. Clemens, thank you for your comments. I've made note of that, and we will make sure that the representatives from Nexamp address that question. Is there anybody else here to address the commission regarding the Hawk Hill Solar Project? Mr. Rothbard, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mike Forster Rothbard. I live at 34 Spruce Street. I submitted a letter in which I talked about 6 concerns, some of which have already been addressed. But I just want to say that my first concern is that the city of Oneonta has not yet developed a policy framework for such solar utility projects. I mean, I think it's wonderful that Hartwick is developing this renewable energy project. I think it's absolutely essential that communities like ours become more self-reliant in generating our electricity. But I think we need to be really careful in the applications for these projects. And I note that, you know, a utility project is not an approved use in a university zone, but then again, it's not an approved use in any zoning district in Oneonta because that work has not been done. So part of Hartwick and Nexam's issue about being ahead of the curve is that we still need to figure out as a community, and you as a plan commission and our common council, where, you know, to revise, I think to figure out a policy statement and then also look at the zoning map and amend the zoning map to figure out what zoning districts such a project is appropriate in. It seems premature to me to approve a project until that work has been done. And there was some talk the last meeting about whether they could, you know, the project could move forward and be grandfathered in. And it doesn't seem like a great idea. Let's get it right the first time as opposed to developing this project and then wishing we had required some different design guidelines, you know, once we figure out what's the right thing. My second biggest concern is I think this is a great project and it should be built, but not here. As can I share my screen? Is that, do I choose to do that? Yes. All right, I'm sharing my screen. Can you guys see this? These images?
Yes.
So, you know, it's really a unique location for Oneonta. The view from this location is unparalleled in our community. And I really think that it's a positive resource. Oneonta promotes itself as the city of the hills. But in reality, there are only 2 main hills that are actually in the city. The rest are in the town of Oneonta. One of them is Hartwick's Hill, and the other belongs, the top of the hill belongs to Glenwood Cemetery. And we've been very fortunate as members of the community that these private organizations have allowed public use of their property for such a long time. And it seems really to me a shame to disturb this. And, you know, this was the comet last summer, which I photographed from what's the middle of now proposed to be this project. And I would hate to see sort of such a project built right in the middle. How do I stop sharing my screen? Okay. So I looked at the maps of Hartwick's property, and in my letter, you'll see I suggested half a dozen different places that, some of them on the Hartwick property, on Hartwick's 500-acre property, and some of them nearby, that might be other feasible locations for this project. I haven't been able to get an answer about whether anyone's really done the review to see whether these other locations fit all the, you know, engineering requirements and so on. But all of these locations, you know, they all have pluses and minuses. But to me, this location, both for the recreational aspect, for the lack of setback, for the natural impact right in the middle of a recreational corridor, to me seems like the worst option of the 6 that I looked at. Is it helpful for me to pull up maps of those sites now?
I think we received them, but if you would like to, commissioners, are you okay with Mr. Forster Rothbard sharing his screen to look at it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I think, please go ahead, Mike.
All right, let me share that again then. Um, so I'll just talk about these briefly. This is sort of next to the Binder Gym. It still intrudes a little bit on the natural area, but it's closer to the developed parts of Hartwick, so it's less intrusive, both for recreational purposes and for wildlife purposes. It is where there's an athletic field that would have to be relocated somewhere else. Here's another feasible site, perhaps, along Chestnut Street. I don't know enough about the engineering. There is some water drainage in this area, similar to the Strawberry Field area, and so, you know, I'm not an engineer. I'm just looking at possibilities here. A couple sites on the rail yard, and I know, obviously, this is a project that Hartwick wants to do, that Hartwick would benefit from. But if we think about benefits to the community as a whole, you know, the rail yard's already a commercial industrial district with flat land, with good sunlight, with good utility access and road access. Really, if we think about it broadly, not just what Hartwick needs, but what we need as a community, the rail yard seems like a logical place to do that kind of development. The last site is, you know, Hartwick's property goes all the way out to Winnie Hill Road. And so you'll see on the right, there's the athletic field where the project's proposed to be. And if the project was just pushed further back, so it's, again, not in the middle of the recreational and viewshed corridor, but off to the side. You know, the people who live on Winnie Hill Road won't be happy with me if Plan Commission liked the idea of pushing it towards their houses, but it's a less intrusive site. And finally, I just wanted to say, you know, this is from a 1884 map of Oneonta, and you can see the wooded area on the left is the forested area around Table Rock, and the meadow area on the right is Strawberry Field. This area's been used by the population of Oneonta for decades, I mean, for centuries. I looked up some history, and I was really interested to see if I can find this. If I can't find this quote right now. Oh yeah. Apparently, according to the historian Milliner, this was called Rock Hill, and it was cleared in the early decades of Oneonta, more than 200 years ago, and was used as a recreational gathering place starting in the 1820s. So yes, Hartwick owns it now, but before Hartwick College was even there, this was a community asset. And I mean, you could say fencing 26 acres and putting an industrial utility project in the middle of it doesn't completely make this site unusable, but it changes it permanently and irrevocably. And I think we really need to think long and hard about, you know, if we are the city of the hills, if we want to promote this, you know, places like Strawberry Field are in our promotional literature for this city as a place where we want people, you know, no, we promote our trails, you know, biking, skiing, hiking. And so is a utility project really the right thing to put in the middle of our trails? I think instead what we should be doing is protecting the top of our hill corridors, you know, the places in Colorado that set development limit above a certain elevation. I'm not saying that we want to do that precisely, but we want to think about what we want to preserve for the long term. Hartwick, I mean, Oneonta is going to see development pressure as people want to move out of New York City, and that's great. Our city will grow, and we want that. We'll bring in new people, new life, exciting new things, but we want to think hard about where we want that development to take place. That's all. In my letter, I address a couple other issues, but those are the primary points. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your comments. Are there any other petitioners here to address the commission about the Hawk Hill Solar Project that we haven't gotten to yet? Okay.
Danny, I'm sorry. This is Len Carson, 16 Kearney Street.
Hi, Len. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure all the neighbors from Suncrest and Overlook and College had an opportunity first. First off, I just wanted to say that I'm thankful Harper College is looking at a green alternative. I recognize what Mike was just saying, that we don't necessarily have the necessary foundation for a solar array at this magnitude to be put in. But I like the fact that the Planning Commission at this point is entertaining petitioners. I'd also like to say thank you to Nexamp for coming to Oneonta and taking a look at the project. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get through these concerns because overall, as the council member representative of the 5th Ward, which this parcel is located in, I have not heard one neighbor say a negative against the project. It's just these concerns that have been addressed today. But I also wanted to reinforce what Kim has already brought up, and that's with regards to the long-term vegetation plan. Now, I did start going through the 281-page SWPPP earlier today, spent some time reading through that, and I see where the project during construction and after construction is addressing the vegetation plan, but I don't see where it's addressing long-term. And I know that several of the neighbors have voiced a concern about actually visually seeing the solar panels, which was discussed last night. And I also want to thank Liza for taking time out of her day and walking us through that project. It was then that I personally found out that the panels will have an overall height above topography of 18 feet. And so I just show a little concern on behalf of a representative for the 5th Ward and these residents that I just don't know how they're not going to not see that through a 7-foot fence when the panels themselves are 18 feet tall. So if I've misunderstood anything, please, I look forward through the discussions of hearing the corrections. The access road was gone over last night. It's going to be plus or minus 15 or 16 feet wide. There'll be a gravel base, but what I have concerns about also is the surface water. And so according to the plans, I might have missed it, and I apologize if I did, that I just don't see where there's the drainage is being addressed long-term. I see I think it was a C210, the addressing of the swale, but I'm just not seeing it on the overall drawings, and that might be because of my small computer screen. Maybe on a larger format, I'll be able to see it. And that goes along with, I see the socks that are going to be laid out during construction. But again, the neighbors have made it explicitly clear to me that they have grave concerns about the drainage. And I understand that Nexamp is leasing the land and that they're going to be responsible for approximately 15 feet outside the fence. And so from that point forward, I would just naturally gravitate to assume that the landowner would be responsible for the drainage. And so again, as a representative of the neighbors, I would like to see a full out discussion on the drainage and how we're going to correct the drainage that's been the surface water is just, I got to be honest with you, phenomenal. In the last year and a half, I've been going up there during rainstorms and just looking at the amount of water that's coming out. I know that we petitioned with our city engineer to have curbing put on in front of different residents' homes to help their water, but the particular residents that are bordering this project, they don't have that opportunity. Now there is a swale that I'm told is approximately 30 years old. There is a catch basin, but none of that has been maintained. And I look for the discussion from the landowner through this project procedures that we can hear for the residents how those drainage issues are going to be addressed. And I believe it was Carol that brought up the traffic plan, but there has been several neighbors that have brought up their concerns, or I think it was Kim, sorry, that the traffic plan. And so we would be very interested to hear from Nexamp the type of equipment and how often the heavy equipment is going to be going up and down into their neighborhood. The trail system, I look forward to open discussions on the landowner on how we can address that. That has been brought up multiple times, and that's just not even these neighbors. This is folks that could come off of the Chestnut Street area. They have concerns. You know, we're very thankful to the property owner for allowing us the opportunity to use the trail system, or just to be able to hike and utilize their land. And we are very thankful for that. But we're wondering if we're going to be able to access that property in the future. So the only other positive that I wanted to bring up is that Nexamp, I wanted to say, Michael, thank you very much for having a history of not selling off your properties. I do appreciate that. The longevity of the ownership was of concern. So thank you, Michael, for having that type of track record with your business. Other than that, I will yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilman Carson. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other petitioners here to address the commission about the Hawk Hill Solar Project? Okay, hearing none. The representatives from Nexamp. Would you, so I guess, do you have new information to present to us? Or have you had a chance to review the public correspondence that was submitted? And I was wondering if you could shed some insight into that, hopefully answer some of the questions on record, and then we'll allow the commission to ask questions about the application, and we'll discuss next steps after that.
That sounds great, Commissioner. This is Mike Cucchiera. Liza is also on the line tonight. And I think she'll be putting up our PowerPoint, and we'll be sort of taking turns going through it. The main purpose was to go through, we bucketed the concerns into sort of major topics. I think hopefully we could address everyone's general concerns. If there still remain specific ones and you'd like to point out specific comments in particular, we're happy to get those to you in writing. But hopefully the PowerPoint tonight will serve as the first step in a a public response from Nexamp. We also have Ruben Hall here, who will also be part of the presentation, and really we're going to lean on him on the environmental and stormwater questions, because that really is a very technical component, and so we'll have him at the end. But I will get started up front if that's okay with you.
Mike, do you want me to share my screen?
By all means,
that would be great.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you, Liza. Liza, we could, I guess, go through, I just kind of introduced everyone, so maybe go to that first slide that we have there past the design.
Right.
I think maybe slide 4.
The public concerns.
Yeah. So I think, and thanks, Liza, for being out there last night. I apologize, I could not be out there as well. We had multiple planning boards last night, so we had to kind of divide the work. But what me and Liza had done was we read through all the comments, we categorized them in a variety of different categories. And these are the categories that we pulled out: the location or relocation of the project. There was a request for examples of nearby Nexamp projects, noise, glare, traffic impacts, and so on. You could read through. So we'll go through those. And I think if we get to the end and there are specific questions that were not answered, obviously we have a forum tonight. So I'll start with the first two concerns. And the location of the project is really, I think, was the crux of a lot of concerns here. Unfortunately, for this application, it is our view that relocation of this project is really just not possible for a variety of reasons. One, the Hartwick College was identified this parcel and this parcel alone as suitable for them for solar. And it just happens to be that it's also their largest site that we could actually use. I think some of the sites, and Mike Foster Rothbart, apologize if I messed up the name, but identified some sites further south on Hartwick land. If you look at the topography, and I can include this when we update it, one challenge we had with this site, and also related with your concerns on water movement across the service, is the slope of the land. So for one, Hartwick did not offer those sites. we're already entered into a lease on this current location. So I think for the purposes of this application of the Planning Board Commission, we would like to keep those comments to how we can mitigate and address as many concerns as possible and make this project workable within the community. The other point I would add to this is that our interconnection point right now is fixed by a utility study. This is a pretty long process, anywhere between 6 to 9 months. We've actually done 2 studies on this. One being the reason why we had to restudy it was that the original point of interconnection, which would have made it cheaper for Nexamp to interconnect, would have basically cut across someone's literally backyard, where we would have put these interconnection poles directly adjacent to their backdoor window. So we actually asked for a restudied application. They moved that location from where it originally was to where it's currently located, where we think it's a better spot. Point of my whole story, though, is if we were to change locations, we could not maintain that current interconnection point, setting us back 6 to 9 months. This would effectively, stop the project, both for the college and Nexamp, because we wouldn't be able to meet contracted timelines and milestones, as well as incentive program timelines and milestones. So for those reasons, we would petition to the Planning Commission that, we table that. Perhaps if there are other sites that City of Oneonta is open to developing, we certainly would like to be part of that conversation. But for the purposes of this application, I think we should really move to more of mitigation and ways we can make sure that this project doesn't impact the neighbors in a negative way. I would also quickly add, we are, and we will talk about this, reconnecting trails. I think, the trail system will still be accessible as long as Harvard College remains amenable to that. I understand that the field on the top will not be as accessible and not be available to residents. But unfortunately, we're limited to where we've been allowed to develop and propose by the college. I'll move on to the next one. I'm sure there'll be more questions on that, but if I could talk quickly, there was questions on projects nearby. And so one of them, and I would say these projects and potentially other projects that are nearby, I would be happy to offer, whether site addresses, if someone wanted to drive by or was in the area to look from the street. I could not allow people to go on site. If we wanted to do something more formal, we could perhaps get permission to actually view these. But this one is up in Fulton County, where I was headed last night, close by at least, about an hour and a half north. In Johnstown, New York. This is a 5.8 megawatt solar project located next to a golf course. There are residents behind us. You can't quite see it here, but we have, I think, over about 250 trees planted along the buffer. It also benefits from some natural screening, as this project does. But this is a fixed tilt project, and it actually has storage on it in the middle. So this was one example, and located on Hales Mills Road in Johnstown, New York. The next project, a little bit closer in line to what we're proposing here. And this is sort of a weird bird's eye view. We're still waiting for some good aerial images, but this is a tracker system. And what you're looking at here in the foreground, so right up front is approximately, that's a 6.5 megawatt DC solar project with trackers. There's another field behind that, and that one's a separate 6.5 megawatts. So what you're looking at here as you go across the field is actually 2 of the Hartwick Hawk Hill type projects located right next to each other. So this gives you a little bit better view of these tracker systems, and you can see them sort of tilted to the west in this picture. This one's located in Lenox, New York, just outside the town of Canastota on BB Bridge Road. This one, I think, is a great example of sort of a very close project to what we're proposing here tonight. So, and I can get into more details later on, but I think, Liza, I'm happy to have you take through the next slides. I think maybe we'll just go through without comment, and then at the end, we can go back to any of these slides as needed.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks, Mike. So as far as noise, the feature which emits the most noise is the inverter, which is located on the equipment pad, which is within both of these circles. Just for measure, the inverter makes about a noise of about 73 decibels, which is comparable to an alarm clock or a vacuum or loud talking. This level of noise is mitigated over about 200 feet. What I've drawn here on the slide, which you can see in red, is a 200-foot radius circle. So the closest property line is well over 200 feet from these inverters, and noise would be mitigated before reaching any neighbor's backyard or anything like that. Another concern that was brought up was glare. And it was brought up in terms of, will this be reflecting into neighbors' backyards or into individual eyes? And I think that this is a little bit of a misconception about solar. 70 or 98% of sunlight is absorbed within these modules. This is less glare than a window of water. And many solar farms and arrays are built near airport runways, which is testament to that there's proven to be a non-issue with glare for solar panels. Also, based on the location of these nearby homes with respect to the module placement and orientation, glare would not reflect in the direction of the homes. We received a lot of line of questioning regarding traffic impacts and the access road location. I know the project was brought up before in that Nexamp bid for this project. Every single company that bid for the project noted for various reasons that the access would need to be located on Suncrest Terrace. One of the main reasons being topography in this area. There was one question that we received last night about why the access road does not come from the point of interconnection. That specific topography in that area is well over 20%, which is not feasible to bring a road up at all. So with that, before presenting this project, we had looked into various options, and one of which was on Suncrest Terrace. Hartwick owns a lot of land in the area, one sliver of which being between 12 and 14 Suncrest Terrace. As you can see in the zoomed in photo here, that a neighboring driveway is actually built on Hartwick's land and has been used as such. And based on many discussions with Hartwick, and this was actually the initial one, because the initial option that we looked into would have required permanently changing that driveway and bringing the road that way. So there were different alternatives looked into. Despite the added cost for the option that we have presented for Nexamp, given the length of this option and building out the graded road the entire length, Hartwick and Nexamp determined that utilizing and improving this existing road would be preferable for the neighborhood community. And just to note, and because last night at the site walk, I think that this was something that may not have been clearly communicated before. The access road up until the fence the fence does not extend the entire way of the access road. The only area that is fenced off is the solar array at the top, and that fence is shown on the site plans. So the full length of the access road, not shown here, this was just an option that we looked into in the option that we presented, is a non-exclusive easement with Nexamp and Hartwick. So just wanted to make that noted. It is not, the full length of the access road is not blocked off for only Nexamp's exclusive use. In addition, I know that there is concern with traffic impacts. One of there was a few line of questions regarding a truck's ability to navigate College Terrace to Suncrest Terrace. This is something that we had looked into. Labella, our civil engineer, and Ruben can speak further to this, has conducted a simulation with the largest possible truck, which is a WB65 semi-trailer, to confirm the truck's ability to maneuver this path using College Terrace and Suncrest Terrace, and therefore alleviating concern for the rest of the surrounding areas, which some members from the public expressed concern about traffic going alternative routes. There will be some deliveries with equipment that will use these larger trucks. The size and frequency of the truck is dictated by the construction schedule and the work being done in that phase. It is not necessarily a steady stream of trucks throughout the entire construction sequence and in construction schedule. And we hear your concern for truck traffic in the area and having children in the neighborhood. We Nexamp recently constructed a project, Mendon Renewables, which is right next to a school. And one thing that was done both from traffic control and alleviating any backup during peak times, and also for safety, was they had set up very strict delivery windows. And that's one thing that Nexamp can work with the community to set up delivery windows for both convenience of the neighborhood and also there was also concern about trucks driving on the existing road. That's something that Nexamp would be willing to work with the city or highway superintendent and establish record of the existing roadway conditions and if necessary, mitigate anything that's attributed to this truck traffic. Another item that was brought up was trail interconnection. Given the public's use of Hartwick's private land trails and concern for maintaining this interconnection for these trails for the public's continued use, most of the trails do not go directly through this area, but there is some interrupted interconnection from this solar array. What we're doing, and we've started this with our civil engineer, we're proposing rerouting the trail around the fence line to maintain interconnection. Like I had previously said, the only area that is blocked off from public use is within the fence located in this area. So what I have shown is actually they have drawn this into AutoCAD into our plan site, and it's preliminary, but this is one working option of bringing the trail around the proposed fence line and interconnecting the existing trails in the area for continued public recreational use of these trails. As far as visual impacts, this is one thing that we've been looking into. From a zoning perspective, the required setbacks from the front, side, and rear are shown here, 25 feet, 40 feet, and 40 feet respectively. Our proposed setbacks well exceed what is required. And from a compliance standpoint, it is what we've proposed does exceed the required setbacks, but we understand the impacts to the community. There are things that we are willing to do, one of which that we weren't able to get in time for this meeting today, but we're willing to look into and establish for future meetings to enhance communication and understanding about what the sight lines, the visual impact would be some type of assessment. And there's a few different options with that. But in addition to that, enhanced screening, we have already in our initial project as proposed here, have proposed a wooden fixed, not farm fence on the following slide. I can show you what that looks like. And also vegetation. Screening is meant to minimize impacts of visual impacts, but not necessarily 100% coverage of the solar array. That's not what it is inherently. Here we have the farm fence in one of the applications. As you can see, it is a lot more natural and aesthetically pleasing than some of the other full height metal fences as required to surround solar arrays. Some of them look very scary, almost as if they have all these different features, but this is one thing that we do on most all of our projects, I believe. And then here's what the gates would look like. So the only time that you have that metal surround is at the gates. Next.
Liza, can I just jump in real quick on the vegetation and the visual assessment? I think,
Yes.
we have not proposed any vegetative screening. We'd imagine that might be something the Planning Commission would require. I think with a visual impact assessment that we could have for the next meeting, I think that would help tell us where we would need it. And hopefully that would guide the Planning Commission and also us to make the right decisions and, utilize both existing vegetation as well as anything that we might need to install to make sure that view sheds are not impacted from neighbors below. So that's all I wanted to add.
Mike, did you want to get into property values or do you want me to?
Sure. No, I can take this one. This is certainly a concern that we've heard before. Nexamp had commissioned previously, and this is in a different state. This was in Illinois for projects we were doing out there. We engaged with Cone Resnick, who has done quite a few of these. And if you go out on the website, the one I have is marked confidential, not to be shared. I found them all over the internet. However, this one we did, it studied 15 sites and 15 solar project sites, and then compared those to 63 control sites and sales of homes, similar size, bathroom, bedrooms, and character neighborhoods. And they studied, and so what they did was they compared sort of the sale value of homes located next to these solar projects, anywhere between 83 to even up to 1,300 feet from the panel's edge of the projects. Our study that we had completed for a project we needed to do in Illinois had come back with, basically no consistent negative impact, or really no statistical evidence showing that there was any decrease in value. In fact, the majority of the numbers, they actually came out higher for some reason, which may strike us as odd. There was one home that was maybe 1% lower than a control site. Many of the other ones went for higher. And I would point out that the ones we looked at and the projects we studied were much flatter open land where homes were could look right over into these projects through their front window, side window, which I don't think is the case here. And I hope that our visual assessment will show that. I think typically that's what people see as potentially leading to lower property values. I would say that, the same firm has done numerous studies, find a lot of things online. And normally I don't like to be the one that says, look online, but there are other studies, including New York projects done by Cone Resnick, which really determine the same thing, that they cannot find sort of a statistical decrease in the market viability of homes or cost, sale price, unit sale price, or other market indicators that they could study. So that's our response in the property value area. I think, and we're happy to discuss that further as needed. And Liza, we get into, I think, are we getting into Ruben's section here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so another concern that was brought up was in line with environmental water runoff, drainage features, and all those different item. So to give that full overview, Ruben, our engineer with Labella, who's been working with us throughout this design, can present and speak to those items of concern. Ruben, if you're on.
Yes. Let me share my screen. I need to have permission to share.
You should, yes.
Liza, is yours still on?
I think it just has a lag time, but I
There we
did.
go. Okay, got it now.
Great, thanks, Ruben.
Are you seeing a plan with a lot of red lines on it?
Yes.
Yes. I have the full set of plans here that were submitted, which is the set that you have that's been submitted to the city with a couple of enhancements that we've done since we heard the feedback from the neighbors last month. But for the most part, this is the same set of plans. And speaking to drainage, what I've laid out here in red is the general drainage pattern across the site. There's a ridge line that runs almost down the middle of what I would call the plateau of the site, and then breaks in both directions rather sharply, east and west. And clearly, the way I've got the arrows here, it's clear what the concern is with all of the residents here on Suncrest Terrace, because all of these red lines from the east flow directly down a steep slope in that direction. It starts at a shallower slope and then gets very steep very fast as you get kind of past the edge of the plateau. What is one of the features that there's an existing drainage ditch that comes through here and goes into a vault, a stormwater collection system, and that intercepts flow from kind of this quadrant, but everything north of that is, again, to the extent that we've got our survey and our topography shows it coming directly into the rear of these properties. Looking at what we've proposed, I've shown in blue, two different shades of blue, and I'm going to start at, let me start at this section, and it is split on the plan, so please bear with me as I bounce back and forth. But what we've designed and added in here that was not in the previous set is we've added a ditch line, a formalized ditch on the uphill side of the road, starting at this point on the road as it starts to break downward toward the neighborhood, and then jumping to the other side. That ditch continues, so we have this roadside ditch that will come, and then it will discharge into the culvert that goes into the swale that then flows northward, that I had pointed out earlier, that then goes into the underground system. From that point downward, which is around I think 1,800 feet of the beginning, let's say the lower part of the road, we've continued that ditch all the way down, and we've done some grading. Right now, there's a mix of flat areas and ditch lines, and it's not very well defined. So some of this will run by sheet flow, and this home that's immediately to the south, I can see where today, just by the topography, a great deal of this runoff from this site will come directly into the backyard, and likewise, maybe to a lesser degree, but similar to these homes that are just north of our proposed access point. What we are doing is formalizing, upgrading, and stabilizing as part of this project the roadway and the ditch that would be on that western and southern end, and bringing it all the way down to Suncrest Terrace beyond the homes and connecting into the city stormwater system, with the intent being that any runoff that right now is attributable to this roadway or the area surrounding it, Nexamp is not obligated to make any improvements under either the city requirements or the state requirements. What Nexamp is obligated to do is to make sure that the work that's going in as part of this project is not going to make things worse. But what we have done, partly because just to preserve the new infrastructure that's going in, we are improving what's there between the stabilizing of the road, the ditch lines, and intercepting this runoff in a way that, you know, we need to do that to protect the investment that Nexamp and Hartwick are putting into this project. And in doing so, we'll also be providing some enhancement that's going to benefit the homes that are here adjacent to the entrance. Similarly, on the top of the surface, and I did talk about this at the previous meeting, is we do have what are called these compost filter socks that are a biodegradable wood fiber material. I did bring to show for demonstration. These are different versions of a particular manufacturer. The two on the top are a plastic or a polypropylene type material, which is permanent. The ones on the bottom are a biodegradable sock. And again, these are filled with a wood fiber material. The smaller one is in turn for short-term duration. And then they also make one which is termed for long-term. And most of what we're going to be proposing is going to be on the long-term. And the practice behind this, and what I wanted to show, there's a technical paper that's been written about these materials, and we can include this as a supplemental document with the application. But this is something that the USDA and Natural Resource Conservation Service has put out on these compost filter socks, and it's a 9-page technical paper. I'm not going to get into the details, but I did want to show a couple images to show how they work. And here's one that is slightly larger size than we're going to be using, but it shows how it essentially impounds the water on the site. This is intended as a construction phase one, which would be removed at the completion of construction. What we are proposing is a similar one that will actually remain in place. And we don't have any that specifically show a solar site, but what this does show is here's two images side by side, one that shows during construction how something of this nature would work, how it's laid out on a flat surface, and then how once it's vegetated, how these essentially form stabilization. These can be put right on sloped surfaces. And the intent is that with the biodegradable natural material, it starts to form a substrate that not only traps the water behind it, slows the water down, but also forms the basis for growth of the materials that we're going to, the natural pollinator landscaping that we're going to be revegetating the site with. We're going to be using a slightly smaller size because during the intent is that in our plan, they're going to be within the corridors between the arrays, so we have to be able to get ATV vehicles over them. For maintenance operations, there has to be. We can't completely block it from vehicles, but the analogy I made last time is picture this effectively like speed humps. When they are done, when they go in, they look something like this, where the work area is to the left and the area to be protected is to the right. And it's this mound that's staked in. In a temporary installation, these would be removed. And in the end, once everything is stabilized, and these would be removed. In this particular design that we're doing, these will actually remain in place and will start to degrade and have these, again, speed humps, so to speak, that are going to remain there, so that after the project is done and stabilized and the contractor walks away, there's still these hollows behind each one, which we have this series of parallel filter socks. So at every one of these, it's going to slow down and allow infiltration of the flow, where right now from this red line all the way down to the bottom of the hill, it's an unencumbered slope. What we're going to be doing is encumbering it. And that's the intent that's behind here, to meet both the during construction stormwater management. There's two aspects that we have to work with when we're doing our design. One is the quantity of flow and the quantity of runoff, and not increasing the quantity, how much water is coming through. The second is the quality, and that gets to erosion and sediment control, and being able to capture any silt or any, prevent any erosion and capture any open disturbed areas, so it does not leave the site and doesn't get to the home. It doesn't get off site at all. And the way that we're doing that with these filter socks is that, one, we're slowing everything down so that the runoff will actually, I can confidently say, as a professional engineer, that when this is done, there will be a reduction in the amount of runoff that is going to be flowing toward the east when this is done, based on this design. Secondly, there is going to be no degradation of quality during construction, because these will be put in place that will prevent any siltation or any eroded material that's disturbed during construction from getting off site, and then it will enhance the post-construction to facilitate and stabilize the ground. That, again, will end up, by the time it's done, will look something along this line. That's the practice behind it. We, as part of our design, have to do a stormwater plan that goes through Department of Environmental Conservation. Our stormwater reports are typically between 250 and 300 pages long, that get into individual minutia of the size of these drainage areas and where it's being collected and how it's going and how we are managing, and those two aspects that I talked about, one being the quantity and two being the quality. I don't want to belabor the point and get too much into the technical aspects of it, but I did want to give an overview of the theory and the practice that's behind how we are handling the stormwater on this site. I will state on the record that this will be an improvement over what's there today when it is done, compared to the current conditions. The only change in surface that there is, which is typically what would change quantity, are these concrete pads. There's 1 and 2, and that is the only change from surface material. Other than that, we're replicating the existing conditions. So at a minimum, there would be no change. But again, I will state for the record that what we are proposing here as an enhancement, partially, again, to protect the investment that Nexamp and Hartwick are putting into this site, and a benefit of that is that it really will protect what is happening on this side of the slope, and it be an improvement over what is happening, what's there today. That, I think that, again, that wraps up where our approach is with regard to the drainage. We've heard very loud and clear, and it is very understandable, seeing the placement of these homes adjacent to the site, that there very much is a legitimate concern. I don't have an answer for the question that came up from the public earlier about, after this is done, who is accountable for monitoring and enforcing that this is not going to be that's not going to make it worse. The entire time that it's under construction, it will be under a permit. The contractor and the developer are both under the same permit, and there will be, there are fines and there are inspections every week at a minimum. Possibly, if there's extreme storms, those inspections will happen twice a week. That's all part of the permit process that we have to prepare and Nexamp will be obligated. So during the construction process, that is all very well regimented. I do would have to defer back to the town. I think you certainly want to have an answer to that. Again, this is to the board. I think you want to be able to have an answer to that in terms of administratively within the city, how that would be handled post-construction with regard to both the developer, the college, and the city as to who will assure that this is going to function as we have designed it.
Ruben, if I could just follow up on that, as far as, and Len, thank you for recognizing that, Nexamp will be a long-term owner and operator of this project. Our operation and maintenance team is also in-house. And, typically any swales, any kind of stormwater management, permanent structures would be part of our operation and maintenance plan to make sure that they are operating as intended. So whether it's cleaning out swales or making sure that those filter socks remain in place and vegetated, that is something we could certainly add in our O&M plan. Anything within our lease area or in that easement area where we'll be using that road will certainly be only to our benefit to make sure that they are operating properly.
So again, I think that concludes what I had for the drainage, and that again kind of rolls into the environmental as well. As I noted, this will all go through a DEC review of all of the stormwater, and it will have to be permitted for, again, both construction, and then there will be a termination that will conclude that it's once it's been stabilized at the end of construction.
Ruben, can I just respond? One of the environmental questions is around, sort of species and habitat. I know as part of seeker, hopefully, which we could begin tonight, we will have probably a formal letter from DEC, but I know there was correspondence that Labella had with checking in with the DEC, indicating that there was no endangered or threatened habitat or animals impacted on this site. And maybe we can enter that into the record, at least for the time being, until further review is done through the seeker process.
Yeah, that is correct. That we have to go through the process of endangered and threatened species, and our environmental team did review it and confirm that there is no endangered threatened species associated with this project. And an added benefit compared to most solar projects that I've worked on is with the fencing that's being proposed and the vegetation, the way this is being proposed on this project. Most of the what I would say is the flora and fauna that is there today will be similar. Again, one of the speakers earlier from the public did note that it is going to be different. It will be fenced off. There will be some changes. There will likely be, again, wildlife corridor may change where they'll go around the fence instead of through where they were going right now. But in general, any animal that will be able to get into that fence will be able to get out of that fence. Any that will be able to get over the fence will be able to get over the fence out. So there will be, while there will be what I would say a nominal change as a result of fencing this off, for the most part, it will not change the type of species that will be here. And certainly the vegetation will be intended to be as close to replicating what's there now.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate all the detail. I will ask that you do share the technical paper on the filter socks with us as part of a addendum to your application. I wrote that down. I made note of that. So now I want to open the floor to the commissioners. They've been very patient. I see Commissioner Stanton has joined us. Welcome. So commissioners, do you have any questions for the representatives from Nexamp?
Yeah.
First. Commissioner Digan, go ahead.
I would say I have 2 points. The first one being the trail reroute that you mentioned. I appreciate you taking the time to actually work on that and take that into consideration. I just want to make sure that When you finalize those plans for the trail reroute, maybe reaching out to the Oneonta Trail Association, or maybe we can do that for NextAmp as the commission, just to make sure they're on board. I mean, and that someone that actually uses the trails has some input there. And then my second thing, which is maybe a bigger point, is, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, and one of the members of the public brought up that we do not have a solar ordinance. And just looking through recently over NYSERDA's model solar law, I think NextAmp meets a lot of those criteria, if not all of them already. That, not to say we would necessarily adopt the exact model solar law, but the one missing piece that I have mentioned before is the decommissioning. And I guess I would ask NextAmp, would you be willing to, could we maybe, sign that model decommissioning plan? I guess this is sort of a question for our chair as well, is could we use that model decommissioning plan that NYSERDA has and have both parties sign that?
Yeah, I think we can certainly recommend that the model decommissioning plan is utilized as a template, but I think those kind of legal agreements would be a council matter. And we would probably like to bring in the city attorney to, interact more closely with NextAmp's legal counsel. But
Sure,
I think
maybe we
that,
could
as
recommend
far as the seeker review process goes and any sort of project review component, if there's a mutually agreeable decommissioning strategy that we can work out prior to making the seeker determination, that would be good. I think that's a good course of action.
Yeah, that's certainly acceptable to NextAmp, and something we do on almost every single project we do is enter into a decommissioning agreement and provide a decommissioning plan. If we have not done so, I think we can get that over to you, and then we could work on the legal aspect as far as the actual agreement goes. But we could certainly discuss what we would do during decommissioning. And actually, key part of that is that this is not irrevocable change. The purpose of these projects is to really, when we decommission, you'll see this in our plan, is to leave the site as found. And certainly that'll be part of our decommissioning plan.
Thank you. So do any of the other commissioners have questions for the representatives from NextAmp? Okay, so hearing none, I had a couple of comments actually on the SWIP. So just to clarify on the record, Mr. Hull, the parameters of the Speedies permit is basically involves having no net increase in runoff coming off the site. Is that correct?
Correct.
So just for clarification from the public, I just want to emphasize the point that Mr. Hull made, is that the law only requires NextAmp's project to not add to the existing runoff coming off the site. But as we've seen in the application, the current engineer designs indicate that there will be a net decrease in the overall runoff coming from the site. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. And then there was, I believe, in the introduction on the SWIP, on page 1, it says that the parcel has been rezoned to industrial. The parcel is actually in the university zoning district, unless I'm missing something. So we can ask that that be corrected. And then so in terms of the drainage patterns in section 4.2, there's the New York State's DEC solar memorandum. If you have a copy of that, could you link it as an appendix? That, my understanding is that kind of applies to, whether or not the DEC, like the Department of Environmental Protection before that, deemed it solar panels to be pervious or impervious, and has to do with the stormwater controls installed below them. Is that what the solar memorandum is, or is that something else?
I will get that to you. I have to dig deeper to which that particular one is.
It's on section 4.2
4.2
under proposed conditions.
Yeah.
And it refers to scenario 2 in the solar memorandum. So,
Yeah,
so that's kind of what I understand. You know, the DEC, I was like working on the review of solar projects right when they created that. So it was an interesting thing.
That was where they started with the Maryland reference, and they've taken there's a detail that we have in there that show there's a couple different criteria. There's a criteria 1 and a criteria 2, and don't ask me to get into them because I'm sure I'll get them backwards. But that memorandum is the New York State DEC has taken taken that model that was developed in Maryland and has brought it in and brought it forward. But if we can make sure that you've got all the backup for that.
Great, thank you. And so the PowerPoint, would you mind sharing the PowerPoint that you delivered tonight with, so that we can add it to the record also? And then again, seeker reviews are iterative processes. I wanted to thank you for proposing numerous mitigation measures tonight. It's usually a give and take, so we're glad that NextAmp's willing to work proactively with the city. And we're thankful for that. So sometimes in other past instances, you know, not everybody is willing to put forward mitigation measures on their own. So thank you. So there's a number of things that we should consider. I think Commissioner Daigan brought up a really good point about the model solar law. I think a first step that we could do as a commission would be to review that and to see, you know, how much of the proposed, I guess, model guidelines this project meets. So I think we don't want to rush into that binary decision of do we need a solar or do we not need one. To go down that route, I'm not sure how productive that would be unless we've thoroughly examined model ordinances first. So that said, I think that we can proceed with classifying the action under seeker and initiating, if the commission deems it necessary, initiating a coordinated review on the proposed project. I think in the future, we should also consider zone changes to our zoning code that address solar energy specifically throughout the city, roof mounted and ground mounted, small scale and medium scale, but that can be done in parallel as well. So what does the commission feel like doing as far as the seeker review process? Do we want to move forward with that? Do you feel comfortable starting the review process tonight?
I certainly think we can classify it.
Sure. Okay. So according to
And Danny, I think, or Commissioner Lappin, I think this will be a type 1. Just looking
correct.
at.
Yes. So this is this looks like it would be a type 1 due to its
Over 10 acres.
Over 10 acres. Yeah, due to its size. A type 1 action for the members of the public are, you know, act as kind of the first step in I guess the seeker review process, where we figure out whether a project falls into one of 3 buckets: something requiring a more thorough review, something requiring kind of a less thorough review, or something that a project that may not have any environmental impact. This falls into the first bucket, and this means that the applicant, in this case NextAmp, will have to do a very thorough environmental, I guess, review of the project. We have the commission as lead agency also has to review very thoroughly all the documentation submitted as part of the record before making any determination. And then,
Hey, David.
Yeah.
This is Steve.
Hi, Steve.
One of the other reasons I think this is classified as a type 1 is it's adjacent to a site on the National Register. I think that's also part of the type 1 designation.
Yeah, it is. And then with the new one, it has to be trigger 25% of another threshold, which it already does, right? So.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So let me also refer to the specific regulations if we're going to do like a motion.
And they have already prepared the full EAF. So the next step is really in our court.
Yeah, so this would be, we would classify the action in this case as a type 1 action as per section 617.4, part 6, subpart 1, and part 617.4, part 9 under seeker. So do I have a motion to classify the action as a type 1 action as per seeker's section 617.4?
So moved.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Dygan. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Maskin. Any discussion? So here, just to clarify, this is the part of part 617 that we're referring to is part 617, part dot, I guess, 0.4, part 6, subpart 1, and part 617.4, subpart 9. Just for specificity's sake. Okay, hearing no further discussion, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin. Commissioner Maskin, you're muted.
He's still muted. He says yes.
Yes, sorry about that.
That's okay. Commissioner Stanton. Commissioner
He's
Stanton, you're
muted, too.
muted as well.
You hear
There
me
you
now?
go.
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Dygan
Yes.
passes.
Thank you. And so the next step that we would need to do is initiate a coordinated review. And we would have to identify the involved agencies who would be responsible, who may have some permitting authority over some aspect of the project, or who we may believe to be an interested agency. And so we'd share copies of the application with them for comment.
Commissioner Lappin?
Sure.
We already sent this to the county and the town, correct?
Yeah, we sent the lead agency designation to the county, and the county already conducted a 239M review. So their review, part of the review is done, I believe. They referred it back for local action. The DEC has permitting authority under the Speedies permit, so they would obviously need a copy of the application. I'd want the Oneonta Fire Department to review the ingress and egress points for public safety purposes. I'd like to send them a copy of the application, including the civil sets if possible. The town of Oneonta, because part of the project is in their jurisdiction, and we would want to share the application with the planning board again, with the new information, the current version of the application, with the proposed mitigation measures put forward by Nexamp tonight, and the public comment received to date. I think since it is, Stephen, you said it is adjacent to a parcel on the National Register, so then we would probably want to send a copy of the application to SHPO for reviews. Is that correct?
I believe that we would. I don't know if Nexamp has already been involved with SHPO. I think it indicated on their application that there was some involvement with SHPO, but if not, we can send that, because I think there's actually on the application it notes something involving SHPO.
Would the representatives from Nexamp clarify if SHPO has been involved today?
I'd have to defer to Ruben. I don't know if I've seen a SHPO letter back yet, but I think I'm fine having them as involved agency.
Sure, yeah, they would. Yeah, again, we'd want just for them to review the project, send a letter if they have no interest or see no impact. That only strengthens the quality and veracity of our environmental review And
I have not seen one yet myself, but everything you've said is true. Yeah.
And for the record, we provided this entire application to the Oneonta Fire Department. We make it a policy when there's any new development of this scale that we just immediately send the application to them as well for comment. So the fire department has been provided with this this development, this project.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, are we missing any other entities that would want to see it? I imagine that with the interconnect, you're dealing with NICEAG and NISO by proxy, but I'm sure you've been in contact with them already.
Yep. Commissioner Laban, one thing that we did have a conversation with the Otsego IDA, and they did ask to be included, whether as an involved or maybe just an interested party.
Sure.
So for pilot purposes, which we were discussing with them, they asked to be included as well.
Okay, we'll make a note to send a copy of the application to the to Otsego now as an interested agency. Is there any other entity that we're missing here?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so I guess that's all the action we can take tonight on the project. We look forward to seeing you guys back next month. And just so the public knows is that just because we had the first public comment period kind of start and be addressed now doesn't mean that it's over. It can continue. We encourage the public to remain engaged and continue to comment. What I might suggest that we do is once we see the revised application materials and have a chance to digest it, we can, maybe have another round of comment back and forth, perhaps. Is that acceptable or to the representatives from Nexamp? Since there were a bunch of new information discussed today.
Of course, I think conversation should continue. I would just like to confirm that tonight, it seems like you classified and took a vote. Does that also mean you will circulate after this meeting? And
Correct,
yes. Yeah, okay.
So we will send out the copies of the application indicating that we're initiating the coordinated review under seeker. We'll let the interested and involved agencies know that we've classified the action as a type 1 action, and then we'll await their review. Maybe we'll give them about a month or so to comment, 30 days perhaps, or up to the next meeting, however long that would be in terms of for notice purposes. What does the commission think in terms of a time frame? If it was 30 days, it might go past the next meeting. So that's a concern.
I would do it till the next meeting.
Okay, so we would probably set the deadline to be about maybe a week or so before the next meeting, perhaps. So, and if I'm looking at my calendar, in July, I guess we would be looking for the comments by the 14th.
That sounds fair.
Close of business. Is that doable, Carrie, do you think?
Most of the agencies have been responding to us electronically.
So it should be
We
pretty
also
easy.
have the ability to send out to them electronically. We can follow up with hard copy.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hey, Danny, I think
Yeah.
30 days, am I wrong to say that's just the 16th of July?
Yeah, that would be like the day of our meeting.
No, we're meeting the
Oh,
21st.
21st. Oh, it could be the 16th then. It could be either one.
Let's just make it the 16th. It's a Friday. It's 30 days.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. So the 16th then. All right.
Mr. Chairman, circling back to your second comment on the SWIP, I did just look and that technical document is buried in our appendix. It's on, if you have the electronic version, it's page 249. It says Maryland Department of Environment. Maryland was at the forefront of this technology, these types of technologies, and they developed this technical document in like year 2000. New York State adopted it by reference and includes it in their permitting materials. And we have it as an attachment in our SWIP.
Thank you. I missed it. Thank you very much.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Good.
So I believe this concludes action on the next AMP application for tonight, unless I'm missing something. And then we can move on. I apologize for the lengthy meeting, but you know, it's good to have so much development and so many projects going on in Oneonta. It's a good thing. I'd be depressed if we didn't have any projects to consider. So thank you all, Mr. Kuchera and Mr. Hall and Ms. Sheps. Thank you for your attendance. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is Corning. Do we have a representative from Corning here today to discuss their application?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, this is Benjamin Williams.
Thank you so much for your patience, Mr. Williams. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem. And on behalf of Corning, Ramble will be presenting. So I hope they stuck it out. Mark Jones, Todd Farr, and Stephen Eckler.
Okay, you guys have the floor.
Yeah, this is Steve Eckler. I'm actually going to hand it over to another Rambo person, Rick Duff, who's on the line too. Thank you. I believe Rick's still on there. He is.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can you guys see the aerial photo?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Corning facility. I think you're all very familiar with it and its particular location. This is a expansion, a manufacturing expansion of about 2,800 square feet. And in particular on the site, it is going to be located right within this little area right in here, which is really comprised of sidewalk and asphalt parking and a little bit of green space, which is up adjacent to the building. In particular with the layout, and this corresponds to what was in our submittal package, this is what the anticipated expansion, the building here in the let's call it purple. We will be taking the drive-through that was originally right here, detouring it around the building expansion and adding in a little bit of green space here and here. And the net increase in impervious area is basically zero. Drainage will be is going to happen exactly the way it does today. The utilities will be tied into existing facilities, which are located around the building and under the building. And for the most part, this is it in a nutshell. New sidewalk will be here, which is going to be able to access the existing exit door that is there today. We got a new handicap access ramp to handle these parking spaces, which will be right here, will allow entry into this area here. There are no other doors around this building. Everything is going to be accessed from inside the existing plant. And as mentioned, it's internally it's about 2,800 square feet of expansion. I don't know if you have any other questions related to the package. If there are, we can address those.
I'll open it up to the commissioners to ask questions. So it seems like this the Corning has done a previous expansion not too long ago, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you had you actually had a solar array installed. not too long ago as well. I know that I love seeing it every time I drive by as I go through the 6th Ward. So that's there as well. And then so this is done on a fully impervious, already disturbed site.
Correct.
Okay. So it's
Which is-
all
which
intent,
is
all
right in
intent
here.
and purpose is an infill, kind of like an infill project.
So when we took the application in, and reviewing it, that's kind of how I looked at this. It's previously disturbed. It's, you know, it's they're not really increasing impervious coverage because it's already been, you know, it already is. I mean, it's basically just an expansion of the facilities.
Okay. So in this case, so this looks to me like a clear type 2 action under seeker. Do
you want a motion, Danny?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Maskin to classify the action as a type 2 action under seeker. And this has to do with the construction or expansion of a primary or non-residential structure or facility involving less than 4,000 square feet. Thanks to Stephen for putting that forward. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Stanton. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Sorry, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Then thank you. So the next component is a site plan review of the site plan. Do any of the commissioners have comments on the site plan submitted by Corning? Okay, here, it's a pretty straightforward plan. It looks good to me. Do I have a motion to get, I guess, issue site plan approval for the Corning?
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Have we heard back from the county yet, Stephen?
Oh, we need to 609 review.
I would have to, I think we have, I would have to ask, I've been having them send both to myself, I think Carrie and Danny. I would have to look at the my email though.
I can
Did
check.
you get an email, Danny? Because I think they've been CCing you on those too.
I'll check. Hold on, but it's going to take me a little.
The only one I know that we haven't gotten one back from for the Springbrook project, but I want to say we did get one back from Corning, but I can't say with certainty, and I can't access my email.
I see it indicated as of.
Yes, I see it. I got it. It was date of receipt. So they recommended return for local action on the 2nd of June. I have it. So it was referred this time. We did. Thank you.
Well, I knew it was referred. I just wasn't sure if we had a response yet.
Yeah, we did. It was received on the 2nd, or the recommendation was issued on the 2nd, and the county acknowledged receipt on the 11th of May. I think we're good for site plan approval now. So that said, do I have a motion for site plan approval? Or to issue site plan approval for Corning?
Sure. I'll make that
Motion
motion.
made by Commissioner Maskin. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Dygan. Was that you who raised your hand?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
All right, thanks. Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Okay. So now, it looks like site plan approval has been issued. So thank you. Representatives from Corning, we appreciate your time. Next on the agenda, we have Springbrook. We have a representative from Springbrook here. I see.
Hi, Chairman Lappin. Yes, we're here.
Great. Are there any petitioners here to discuss the Springbrook project? I know there was one, but they might have left. Okay. Well, this recording will be made available to the public for viewing on YouTube later. So I'm sure that they will be. I'm sure that they can be informed later. So right now, so we've looked at the I guess the project narrative. Do you want to kind of go over if you've made any changes? Are there any new developments with the project? If you wanted to go over those with us. If there are none, we can kind of proceed with the review of the short EAF and classify the action under seeker and go through the site plan review process.
I don't believe there's any significant changes since we did our sketch plan review a couple of weeks ago. So, but I would defer. We have members of our architectural team here with us tonight, as well as Springbrook Facilities. So if they have anything that's changed, I'd ask them to comment, but I'm just trying to think. Scott, anything?
No, I'm Scott Townsend with 3T Architects. I've been working with Springbrook on this project where the architect moving forward, should we get approval. And there have been no significant change. What we have submitted is what we're presenting. So
great, thank you.
All of the commissioners have seen.
Just making sure, yeah, you've done numerous presentations, so we've all had a chance to become acquainted with the project material. So I think we can start with the seeker review process now. So commissioners, are there any, in terms of a seeker classification, since this project is an infill development on an existing building, it's unlikely to have a substantial environmental impact. And Mr. Townsend has already indicated that the building would be designed to be consistent with the historic character of Main Street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so in my mind, that would be the only thing that would probably make us classify the action as unlisted. And then, we've been through this many times before, but the issues around parking, the abundance or lack thereof of parking in my mind does not constitute a significant impact to the environment. It's actually a detriment to have too much parking and too much dependence on the automobile. So that's kind of
on the parking note. I know I asked this last time. I just forgot the answer. I know it was answered, but we're operating under the current zoning code, correct? So is there a variance in process for the?
So the commission, there are provisions of the zoning code which allow the commission to use its discretion to allow as much or as little parking as it deems necessary. And then it's also the city's stated priority to allow for the minimum lowest amount of parking possible. And then we had done an analysis for the Lofts on Dietz project that showed that even with the full implementation of every DRI project and including the Lofts on Dietz project, there would still be parking left over. So some of the projects like the Westcott lot and others have not been fully implemented. And like there's like that food hub project as part of the DRI that wasn't implemented either. And a number of other upper floor activations haven't been activated. So parking, in my opinion, isn't an issue.
I would also include, I would include in that too that even under the seeker handbook, this particular development would not fall into the category of creating the amount of parking or the trips triggered per day or per to I mean, seeker would the handbook wouldn't classify this as a vehicle, like an impacting event, like an action that would create additional review based on automobile trips.
Yeah, it's unlikely to really result in a lot of vehicle trips or add substantially to traffic congestion. So, and then traffic congestion isn't really too much of an issue. Although, I think, the fact that this project, is taking advantage of an existing upper floor structure could have some positive environmental impacts actually by redesigning it, making it more energy efficient, allowing for compact dense development in our downtown core that also has substantial environmental benefits to the community. So that said, so to classify the action, we could do, there's a couple of different routes we could go. We could say that the action could be considered a type 2 action under seeker. We could also classify it as a unlisted action, but that would require, we could do that without a coordinated review, but that would require us to prepare a negative declaration, kind of stating our findings, which we would do in writing, and I'd be happy to draft that as well. But that assumes that, so what is the commission's preference? Should two or
This seems like a type 2 action to me.
everybody okay with that? I think the rationale being that there really is no physical disturbance. There's no adverse impacts on transportation, parking. It actually has distinct climate and energy benefits, and also contributes significantly to the objectives outlined in the city's planning documents. So, do I have a motion classifying the action as a type 2 action under seeker?
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion made by Commissioner Dygan and seconded by Commissioner Maskin. Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. So next is the site plan approval. And Stephen, Springbrook has submitted all of the required documentation.
I don't know if we addressed this in the sketch plan conference. Obviously, there's some site plan documents that are probably unnecessary for this review, such as the utilities plan, the
grading plan.
Right, yeah, the grading plan. Obviously, those would kind of be an unnecessary portion of the review. So I would say that the applicant has presented all the material needed to make this site plan review. So I don't know if the planning commission would want to essentially make a motion that they accept the documents as presented as part of the is sufficient for the site plan review, and waiving the drawings related to grading, planting, utilities, because there's a specific list provided with the site plan review application.
Sure. Yeah. So why don't I guess maybe we can I think we could do like 2 motions. First, to waive some of the plans, and the second to deem, I guess, to issue site plan approval. Assuming that there are no further
We can't issue site plan approval without the county response.
All right.
230 hasn't come back yet.
Yes, we're waiting on that. So I guess we could just do the motion waiving the drawings then. And then once the 239M referral comes back, then we will vote on site plan approval. So that would probably be next month in July where we would do that vote. But it essentially, where we can go tonight is that we believe we could probably recommend site plan approval pending 239, pending the 239M comments.
So I would just want to bring it up real quick. If you guys classify this as a type 2 action, I'm not entirely sure that you would need a 239M, because I think if you look at the exemption form, I think we exempt most type 2 actions from that 239M review. I sent the 239M when we did the sketch plan conference because we were unsure as to how the action would be classified. So I don't know if, I think I emailed it to the 239 exemption list to both you and Shane. So I don't know if you want to check that really quick and see if this
Yeah, give me a
act
second.
would then require. Sorry.
No, that's a good point.
Okay, so here it is. Yeah, it says type 2 actions are exempt.
Yeah, so I think that if you look down that list of items, I think if you look at site plan, I think there's a site plan review category, and it lists things that are exempted. And I think type 2 actions are exempted from 239M approval.
Yeah, and so it
239M
says,
review.
so it also says the existing use, the proposed use is similar to the existing use. So it's like commercial to commercial. So this would be, it would have been commercial to mixed use. Very, it's within the realm of similarity, probably less intense actually. So,
Right. So I think the only reason that I had sent this as a 239M was because there had been discussion that this might be an unlisted action.
Yeah, and so the only reason why I thought it might be unlisted would have been the the potential historic impacts and level of design consistency with Main Street, and it seems like that has since been addressed by Mr. Townsend's design.
And I think I believe that Mr. Townsend discussed that this was going to receive tax credits. Was there tax credits through because it's on the National Register?
Yeah, just to confirm that, we will work with SHPO at the state level, who in turn will refer it to National Park Service, which will give us federal and state tax credits.
Correct. So that you would be following their standards to finish the building.
That is correct.
So,
yes.
Right. So,
Great. So in terms of the for site plan approval, so are we ready? I guess I did have one question, not necessarily germane to the parameters for site plan approval, but I did hear from some stakeholders about rents for the businesses. Will that be, I guess I can't really ask whether or not they'll be stable, but it would be important to make sure that the existing tenants are able to remain in the building. I think that's kind of, they're an anchor business. All of the businesses down there in that building are an anchor Main Street, are really important to its character. So we hope that, a good working relationship will be created moving forward.
Yeah, so Chairman Lappin, I can comment on that. There are leases in place for all of the tenants that are existing in the building. And so obviously we would honor those terms and conditions. And it's our intention to have partnerships and continue the vibrancy that's in the building. So we're delighted that we have wonderful tenants there now and want that to continue in the future. It's part of our plan.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Are we ready to motion on site plan approval?
As long as we're so we already made it a type 2 action.
Correct. Yeah, we did. And then, so we would need to waive the plans, the utilities plan, the grading plan, and the landscape plans.
So just, sorry to go back, but the type 2 is okay. There's no problem with the historical review, type 2 versus unlisted.
None. I mean, I think
there's no action that is triggering any sort of threshold that would make this
that type. Yeah, and even if we were particularly we do have the ability to be more sensitive in terms of our environmental review than the handbook, but I believe that the design parameters put forward by Mr. Townsend fully mitigate the potential historic impacts to Main Street. They're not changing the facade, they're not really altering the kind of orientation or massing of the structure. They're not adding anything to it, basically, or reorienting any component of the building. And it's in its current form, it's more of a, it's vacant. So it's kind of, it's a beautiful building. It has great bones, but it would look a lot better if it were mixed use, occupied mixed use. So,
And I would also say the applicant has indicated that SHPO will be involved in the review of the renovate, or the reuse of the building.
so there'll be an additional level of scrutiny on their end too.
Correct.
They're more of the subject matter experts in this commission, even though oftentimes places, will defer to us, but in this case, SHPO is far more suited to review the project for historic consistency with Main Street than we are, I think.
Danny, I need to sign off at 9:30, so if you still need me for voting, maybe we can move it along.
Sure, yeah, we'll keep going. So are we ready to vote on site plan approval? Yeah. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Motion made by Commissioner Stanton. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second by Commissioner Maskin. Any discussion?
Is this for site plan approval or the waiver of the requirements? Or
The
putting
way
them
the
into
way
one
the way
motion?
we could probably just combine it into one motion. Okay, hearing no further discussion. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dygan.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. So, all right, Mr. Hayden, Mr. Townsend, Ms. Sherwood, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Mr. Morris, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for waiting.
We really appreciate it. I mean, it was a packed agenda.
It was a long one tonight.
Yeah,
No, we understand. We understand, and we want to thank the commission for the chance to come before the commission and the citizens of Oneonta. We look forward to the continued partnership.
And we're very excited to have such a community-minded organization building on our Main Street. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so
Looking forward to
much.
seeing what you guys put forward.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. So
Thanks,
last but not least, Phi Sigma Phi. Do we have a representative from Phi Sigma Phi here?
They were not able to finish the sprinkler corrections due to a shortage of parts. So they are planning on coming back. Again, it's not really the applicant's fault. It is just a shortage of sprinkler parts, basically.
Yeah, I completely understand. There's a number of projects on hold at my house due to a shortage of parts too. So,
excuse me, Stephen.
Yeah.
Is that this is Phi Sigma Phi? What about Phi Kappa Psi?
Phi Kappa Psi.
That's the one I asked you about. I texted you about because we had them tabled last month.
56
Yeah.
Maple.
Yeah,
that's
you
what we're
didn't have
talking
other
about.
documentation yet.
Right. So what happened is they didn't have a final sprinkler report. So they didn't come back because they're still waiting to have the sprinkler finished out.
So we have two that don't have the sprinklers done.
I mean, so the one that I'm talking about is 56 Maple. That's
key?
the one that was here last month that was short.
Okay, so but the one that's on the agenda tonight, the other one that's on the agenda tonight is Phi Sigma Phi, 6 Myrtle Ave. You're saying that they don't have their sprinklers?
I don't have anything for them as to why they're not here.
Okay.
okay. So I guess we can just table the Phi Sigma Phi application to the next month and
The other
see.
side.
And then that way we can get to, then we can let you guys go. It's been a long one tonight. So do I have a motion to table the SUP application from Phi Sigma Phi?
Sure, so moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Maskin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Stanton. Any discussion? I guess we can just do a vote by acclamation for this one. So we.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay, I'll clap.
Yay, where you survived. This has been a long one. Thank you for persevering.
I'm sorry for joining late, folks. I apologize for that.
Oh, you're fine. So yeah, we will touch base next month. and if not sooner. So, all right. And,
Okay.
the motion to adjourn.
Something, sure.
Second. All right. Again, I guess all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.